The clock showed 7:20 in the evening when Mary Ellen stepped out of an Uber in front of a white tablecloth restaurant in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side. The place had those warm lights that seemed to promise elegance and discreet conversations, but she, standing in front of the entrance with her dress stained with mud and a dried coffee drip on her sleeve, looked more like she'd taken a wrong turn somewhere. She took a deep breath. There was no time to change. Besides, she didn't even own fancy blind date clothes, as her niece Camilla had put it. She wasn't that type, and she wasn't going to fake it. That day, Mary Ellen had climbed onto a slippery rooftop to rescue Mrs. Henderson's cat, which had been meowing between the air conditioning units for 2 days. Then, barely having time to change, she went straight to the shelter in the Bronx, where she helped every Tuesday and Thursday, serving hot meals to people who'd already lost too much. When she tried to get back home, a bus splashed her with rainwater and mud. As if that weren't enough on the subway, an elderly woman stumbled and spilled her coffee all over her arm. "I'm not backing out now," she said quietly, smoothing her skirt without success. She crossed the entrance. The host gave her a once-over, hesitating whether to let her pass. But she, chin up and eyes steady, simply said, "I have a reservation, under Alex Torres." The young man, surprised, nodded immediately and led her toward the back of the dining room, where a table for two waited beneath a crystal lamp. There he was, a man with perfectly styled hair, light gray suit, white shirt without a single wrinkle. Alex Torres stood up when he saw her, like any well-trained gentleman. Mary Ellen swallowed hard. She'd been mentally prepared for a "sorry, wrong place," or "I don't think we have anything in common." But something in his expression threw her off. Alex observed her attentively but without judgment. On the contrary, he seemed genuinely curious. "Mary Ellen?" he asked with a calm voice. She nodded with a resigned half-smile. "Yeah, though I guess you were expecting something else. My niece forgot to mention this was like a fashion show." He let out a low laugh, almost a sigh. "Truth is, I didn't know what to expect, but I'm glad you're here." The waitress arrived, took their orders. Mary Ellen asked for water with lemon, Alex a red wine. During the first few minutes, the atmosphere was strange, like both were walking a tightrope. But little by little, the tension dissolved. "Sorry about the outfit," she said at one point, gesturing to her dress. "Today was a peculiar day." "What happened?" he asked, with a slight smile. And then Mary Ellen told him, without embellishment, about the trapped cat, the slippery rooftop, the subway coffee, the shelter that smelled of hope and sadness at the same time. As she spoke, Alex's eyes focused more and more on her, as if discovering an unexpected gem in a garbage heap of fake dates. "And you?" she asked after telling him about her adventures. "What do you do?" Alex hesitated a second. "Business," he responded curtly, "but nothing as interesting as rescuing cats and serving hot soup." Mary Ellen laughed. "Don't give me that. I'm sure you have more interesting stories. I just live my life the best I can. That's precisely what impresses me most." She looked at him, intrigued. "The mud or the coffee?" "Your authenticity," he responded without hesitation. "I'm tired of dates where everything's makeup, filters, and rehearsed lines. You showed up here being yourself. That's not something you see every day." For the first time in a long while, Mary Ellen felt seen. Not observed, not evaluated, but truly seen. The conversation flowed as if they'd known each other before. They talked about old books, street food, how hard it is to raise kids these days, though he didn't have any. She shared stories from her childhood in upstate New York. He spoke vaguely about his studies abroad and how he couldn't stand pretentious brunches. The restaurant started emptying out. Some servers were already clearing tables, but they didn't notice. They were immersed. When the check arrived, Alex took it without asking. Mary Ellen wanted to protest, but he gently raised his hand. "Let me treat, please. It's not every day I have such a real date." Walking out, the night was cool. Mary Ellen hugged her arms. Alex took off his jacket and put it over her shoulders. "Thanks for coming just as you are," he told her. I don't know what I expected tonight, but it definitely wasn't this. And I'm glad." She looked at him, half amused, half confused. "You know what?" she said. "I think you're not what you seem either." He smiled without explaining anything. "Maybe you're right." They walked a few more steps until finding a cab. Before saying goodbye, Alex asked for her number, not with the classic "I'll call you," but with, "I'd like to see you again. But this time, can I come with you to the shelter?" She raised an eyebrow. "You? In the Bronx? With real mud?" "That's exactly what I want," he responded. Mary Ellen burst out laughing. "Then get ready. Because they don't serve red wine there." Alex didn't wait more than 2 days to text her again. It was a short message, direct, unpretentious. "Coffee this week. No white tablecloths, I promise." Mary Ellen read the text while folding laundry in her small apartment in Brooklyn. She hesitated. She still didn't understand why a man like him, with that bearing, that confidence, that life that seemed magazine-worthy, was so interested in her. She thought about leaving the message unanswered. But then she remembered how he'd looked at her, not with pity disguised as courtesy. He'd looked at her as if seeing something valuable, and that, at 59 years old, was rarer than a sunset without traffic on the FDR Drive. So she responded, "Tomorrow at 5 at Cafe Reggio in the village. It's small, but the cannoli are good." The next day, Alex arrived on time, wearing a simple navy blue sweater, no suit or tie, as if he'd understood the place's invisible code. The cafe smelled of freshly baked bread and quiet conversations. Mary Ellen was already waiting for him, with her inseparable beige sweater and her hair pulled back in a loose braid. "Good to see you," he said as he sat down. "I hope I'm dressed appropriately this time." She smiled. "You're improving." The conversation was smooth, unpretentious. They talked about the weather, the city, the rescued cat that now wouldn't leave Mrs. Henderson's house. But when the chat began sliding toward the personal, Mary Ellen frowned. "I don't understand what you're doing here," she blurted out suddenly. "Is this some kind of social experiment? A challenge for your millionaire podcast?" Alex looked at her with a seriousness he hadn't shown before. He leaned back slightly in his chair and sighed. "I know it sounds strange, but it's not a game." He took his coffee cup with both hands. "I don't know if I can explain it well. I have spent years surrounded by people who fake it, executives who lie with smiles, women who look at me like I'm a walking credit card. I'm tired." He paused. "What impacted me most about you was that you didn't try to impress. You showed up with mud, with real stories, and even so you were more interesting than anyone I've met in a long time." Mary Ellen lowered her guard a bit. "And you? What do you really do? Because that business thing sounds evasive." He smiled, but this time without arrogance. "I'm CEO of Torres Corporation. You've probably seen the logo on trucks or buildings all over the city." She blinked. She'd seen it. Of course she'd seen it. It was one of the country's largest logistics, transportation, and real estate development companies. "So what are you doing in a neighborhood cafe with a lady who makes a living organizing raffles for the community kitchen?" Alex shrugged. "I ask myself that every day. I have offices with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Fifth Avenue, a house in the Hamptons, a car that drives itself. But every time I get home at night, I feel empty. Like I'm living someone else's life." Silence settled between them. Only the place's murmur filled the air. Mary Ellen observed him without disguising her skepticism. "And when was the last time you did something that wasn't for money?" she asked. Alex went silent. He blinked, then looked down. "I don't know. I think a long time ago." "Well, there's your problem," she said, as if she'd just diagnosed a common cold. "You're starving to death, but not in your stomach, in your soul." The words hit him like a bucket of cold water. Nobody talked to him like that. Not his partners, not his friends, not his therapist, nobody dared. But she did. And that, far from bothering him, made him feel more human than he had in years. After coffee, they walked a few blocks. They passed a park where a group of kids played with a ball made of rolled socks. Alex watched them, as if they were part of a world he no longer belonged to. "Did you ever dream of being something else?" Mary Ellen asked. "As a kid, I wanted to be a firefighter, then an astronaut. Then, I don't know, someone who did something important. I ended up studying finance. My dad said that was the safe choice." "And now?" she inquired. Alex remained silent. He really thought about it. "Now I just want my life to be worth something. Something real." Mary Ellen didn't respond. She just patted his arm as if saying, "Well, get started." That night, Alex didn't go to the fancy restaurant where he had a scheduled meeting. He cancelled. He stayed home, without music, without TV, without distractions. He opened an old notebook and wrote a single question on the first page. "What's the point of everything I have?" And for the first time in a long while, he felt he didn't have an answer. Friday dawned grey, with clouds threatening rain, but Mary Ellen didn't cancel. Since Monday, she'd told Alex that if he wanted to know who she really was, he had to see her in action. This Saturday, 9 o'clock sharp, in front of St. Luke's Church, in the Bronx. No suit, and wear comfortable shoes, she'd written. Alex almost cancelled several times. The idea of leaving his comfort zone, literally and emotionally, churned his stomach. But he showed up, on time. He wore jeans, a cotton shirt and a dark sweater. No driver, no assistants, just him in his own car, asking neighbors for directions. When he saw her waiting for him on the corner, with a plastic bag full of bread and a thermos hanging from her arm, he couldn't help but smile. "Thought you wouldn't come," she said, not hiding her surprise. "Me too," he confessed, sincere. They walked 2 blocks to an old warehouse that, at first glance, seemed abandoned. But crossing the door, Alex felt he'd entered another world. The air smelled of hot soup and disinfectant. Volunteers moved like organized ants. Some prepared plates, others folded blankets. Some more played with children in a corner improvised as daycare. Mary Ellen greeted everyone by name. "Mr. James, how's your back? Martha, did you bring your grandkids today?" Alex followed her, quiet, feeling smaller and smaller. "And what do we do here?" he asked, somewhat awkwardly. "We live," she responded, not looking back. "As best we can." She introduced him to Lucy, a young woman coordinating food box deliveries, to Pete, a recovering alcoholic now in charge of registering new families, to Mrs. Rosario, who knitted hats for the kids with donated yarn scraps. Each person had a story. Each story a wound, and yet the atmosphere was full of something Alex couldn't quite define until he felt it in his chest: hope. At one point, a girl about 5 years old approached him shyly. Her face was stained with sauce and her shoes were torn. She extended a drawing made with broken crayons, a house, a sun, and 2 figures holding hands. "Is this for me?" he asked, moved. The girl nodded. "It's you with my mom," she said, with a huge smile. "Because you're going to help us, right?" Alex crouched down, feeling a lump in his throat. He nodded, unable to speak. Hours later, sitting in a corner, he watched Mary Ellen break bread and hand it out with almost maternal affection. There were no cameras, no recognition, just genuine giving. Silent. When they left, a fine drizzle was falling. Alex said nothing. He walked as if carrying something invisible but heavy. Mary Ellen glanced at him sideways. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were moist. "I've never seen this, not like this, not this close." "And what did you feel?" Alex stopped. The street was empty. Puddles gleamed under the streetlights. "Shame, for everything I have and never shared, for how blind I've been, for living in a world where these stories don't exist because it's convenient for us that they don't exist." Mary Ellen looked at him for a long time. Not with pity, but with that mix of tenderness and demand that women who've seen a lot have. The good thing about opening your eyes is you can't close them anymore. That night, Alex didn't return to his house in the Hamptons. He went to his apartment in Soho, the one he had for casual occasions. He sat on the living room floor in front of the window and looked at the illuminated city as if it were different, as if it were new. He opened his laptop, reviewed his corporate foundation files, empty programs, photos of charity events where nobody got their hands dirty, recycled speeches. He closed everything, opened a new document, and started writing. New purpose for Torres Foundation. Stop pretending to help and actually help. He wrote plans, contacts, ideas. He didn't know where to start, but he knew he couldn't continue the same way. The following days, they stayed in touch. They didn't talk about love, not yet. But the conversations grew longer, more intimate. Alex told her things he'd never said out loud, about the pressure of being the exemplary son, about the fear of failure, about the loneliness hidden behind expensive suits and full schedules. Mary Ellen listened. Sometimes she questioned him. Sometimes she just gave him silence, which is a deeper form of listening. One night, while walking through Washington Square Park, he stopped in front of an empty bench and said, "Do you think our worlds can fit together?" She sat down, crossed her legs, and responded without looking. "I'm not going to stop being who I am. I'm not getting Botox or pretending I like dinners with people who talk about investments. I'm about mud, stray cats, and coffee with cinnamon." "And that's exactly what I like most about you," he said, almost without realizing it. She looked at him then. In her eyes there was no adolescent romanticism, but a powerful mix of reality and tenderness. "Then let's see if you can handle what's real," she said, half joking. But Alex didn't laugh, because he knew that the real was exactly what he needed most. The boardroom at Torres Tower on Fifth Avenue had never seen a meeting like this. None of the executives expected Alex to arrive that morning with a folder under his arm, no tie, and an expression mixing determination with defiance. "We're redirecting 30% of the foundation's budget to real social programs," he announced, without preamble. "No charity dinners at hotels or photo-op campaigns for press. We're going to work with people already in the field, helping where it hurts." An uncomfortable murmur ran through the table. Some exchanged glances. Others looked down at their tablets. One dared raise his voice. "And who's going to coordinate that? A consultant? A specialized firm?" Alex smiled. "No, I have someone better." Days later, in the same room, Mary Ellen entered for the first time. She wasn't wearing heels or a business suit. She wore her floral blouse, denim skirt, and a spiral notebook in her hand. She walked with firm steps, ignoring the incredulous looks from the executives. Alex stood up to receive her. "Meet Mary Ellen Williams, as of today, principal advisor to the foundation." One of the assistants cleared his throat. "Experience with non-profits?" "Decades," Alex responded, "but the real kind, the ones that don't show up on LinkedIn." Later in the office, alone, she looked at him seriously. "Are you sure about what you're doing?" He nodded without hesitation. "More than ever." Mary Ellen sighed. "Okay, but let's be clear. I'm not going to wear expensive clothes or pretend I care about looking good with your partners. I don't plan to change the way I talk or live to fit into your world. This is who I am, Alex, and I'm not cleaning up my soul just to walk through the front door." He looked at her with tenderness. "That's exactly what I like most about you." The project started like a gentle but steady storm. Within weeks, Torres Foundation had signed agreements with 3 shelters, 2 community kitchens, and an expanding volunteer network. Alex used his contacts to get food, medicine, clothing, but did it without spotlights. He no longer sought applause, just results. One cold December night, Mary Ellen invited him to come with her to the shelter again, not as CEO, not as patron, just as him, a man learning to see with different eyes. They arrived in silence. There were more people than usual. The low temperatures had pushed many families to seek refuge. The place smelled of cinnamon, sweat, and hope. Alex put on an apron without thinking twice. He helped carry boxes, distribute food, clean tables. He stained his shirt, got his shoes wet, but never stopped smiling. In a corner, he saw a boy reading an old book under a dim lamp. He approached, sat next to him, and listened as the little one read aloud, stumbling over some words. When he finished, Alex gave him his watch. "It's not worth much, but it tells the exact time. So you know when to read and when to dream," he told him. The boy hugged him without saying anything. At the end of the night, as they collected the last dishes, Mary Ellen watched him from the kitchen. There was something different about him, something more light, as if he were finally where he'd always wanted to be. When they were alone, sitting on the building's back stairs, with breath vapor escaping in the cold air, Alex took her hand. "Mary Ellen," he began. "I'm falling in love with you. But not like in the movies. I'm falling in love with your way of seeing life, with your courage, with your way of loving the world without asking anything in return." She said nothing at first. She just looked at him. Her eyes, so full of history, shone in the dimness. "Then," she finally said with a half-smile, "welcome to real life." And in that instant, surrounded by old bricks, empty trays, and sincere smiles, Alex knew he'd finally come home.